Alright, so in this video I'm just going to give a brief about Logseq and then tell you why it's the best free note-taking app, at least in my opinion, for students. So first, what's Logseq? At its core, it's a note-taking app. But unlike most apps in this space, Logseq doesn't rely on a parent-child relationship, in that the primary paradigm for organization is non-linear and isn't quite like a pen paper system of notebooks and then sections with individual notes in them. Rather, Logseq treats each block and page as its own atomic entity, not necessarily belonging to a page, but capable of existing on its own. While this may seem a bit difficult to grasp, I promise you that once you start using it, it'll be easy to get the hang of and you'll begin to see the true power. So let's take a look at, say, my physics page. So right here you can see I usually keep some basic things about the class. So for instance, over here I have the textbook embedded into the page. Logseq actually has a very nice PDF annotation feature, so you can annotate the text inside the PDF, and it's just a generally really fluid and well integrated experience. But now let's show you the real part that I use for the workflow most often. So let's just go to the hierarchy section, and over here you can see all the nested pages I've embedded into it. So I've got pages for each of the grading criterions. I've got pages for the grades, for the grade that I'm currently in, or the past for future grades as well. I'll be creating pages for those, and in these you can see the subpages of those subpages as well. And yeah, just generally you can get an overlook of all the pages that have to do with physics right here. So let's go to grade 10 physics. And over here I've created a map of contents of the units. These are the ones that I've taken notes on so far. These are the ones I've covered this year. And I've also written the assessment criterion down here. But now let's go to the hierarchy and open, let's say, thermophysics. Now, thermophysics is something that I've touched upon in a previous unit as well in grade 9. So I've actually tagged this with energy transformations, which is the notes from my previous exploration of the same. So I can right click into and open it into the right sidebar, and you can see it here. So now first let's just collapse this for now. We'll get back to that in a bit. So if you look here, I typically take notes in the form of bullet points. So you can actually collapse bullet points and all this in Logseq. So for instance, underneath this bullet I've got what are waves used for, and just a few examples here. So what I tend to do with Logseq is write my notes as much as possible in the form of questions. And then when I'm rereading the notes, I can actually test myself on these questions and ask myself and better challenge myself while recalling them, which can improve your understanding of the topic, which is better for overall retention and learning. So let's see. Now here I've got the definition of energy, and if you've noticed here, there's an underline here, and what this signifies is this is a block reference. So if you click on it, you can see the block ID that's being referenced. But what a block reference basically is I've written this exact phrase somewhere else in my graph, and what I'm doing is referring to this. So let's say if I click on it, it takes me to energy transformations and a sub bullet point in energy transformations. What is energy? And over here it says that energy is the ability and capacity to do work, and this is something that I've linked in the grade 10 physics thermophysics page right over here. I've also talked about this in some notes that are taken from Khan Academy, so I can go here and read a bit about that if I want to. But what this basically shows is that you can quite easily connect your knowledge. You can in a way that's different from most other note-taking apps. You can actually explore context of the notes that you take. You can relate them much easier to the past notes that you've taken. Now, underneath this, you'll see this special kind of block. What this is a block embed. So you can see here's the syntax for that. But what's special about this is that this block isn't actually defined on this page. This block is actually from the energy transformations page. So if I open this block in the sidebar, and one lovely feature about Logseq is that you can zoom into bullet points, because bullet points are pretty much the same thing as are treated similarly to pages. So I can open this page, and this is the title of the page now. What is the types of energy? And you can see the sub bullets underneath that. Similarly, you can zoom in further, and all this. But now let's just look at this. So over here, you can see that the content is the exact same, and making an edit over here, is reflected right over here. And this happens vice versa as well. You may notice that these letters or terms with brackets beside them. What these are links to pages, and this is arguably one of the most powerful features of Logseq. So let me just open this up. And as you can see here, there's a page called Kinetic Energy. And in this page, while it may look empty, what's special about this is this specific section called Linked References. So as you link here, you can see every instance throughout all the notes that you've taken that you've linked to this page, where you've surrounded the letters here with brackets. So as you can look through, you can see all of the mentions of this in the past, and when you've highlighted it properly. You can even filter these based on the page, based on what things it's related to, and what terms fall under the same line. And using this, you can easily find related concepts to what you're learning about. So with a traditional note-taking app, you would likely create like a page about kinetic energy, and then usually repeat all this data, everything that you've written all over again. But the special thing about Logseq is that each block is already a page. Everything is atomic, so you can actually notice that everything here is under kinetic energy already. There's no point in rewriting it all under kinetic energy, because everything that you've mentioned, everything that you found to be important by surrounding in brackets has already been collected under here. And that's probably one of the most powerful features of Logseq, and that's just the beginning of what Logseq can do. So now, another feature here is Unlinked References, and what this is it's a step above, or to be more precise, it's a different step from linked references. What this does is that it searches up every single instance in your database where you've written it, but not necessarily surrounded in brackets. So this is likely to be less specific, so there may be more junk content that may not be completely relevant, because these have been manually added by yourself. But this is still useful for finding connections. Like, for instance, here, I never would have come across this passage over here if I hadn't linked it. If I had just looked at the linked references, I never would have figured out found this passage about my notes, which may have proved useful in an essay that I was writing. So now going back to the physics page. So under here, you can see I've repeatedly used more of these for each block, and over here there's another example of a block reference, which is referenced from actually the same page, actually from a different page, this proof behind calories in versus calories out, where I've defined what chemical energy is and written it here. One interesting thing is here I've put gravitational and potential energy, and inside this I've actually created another embed inside this embed. So as you can see, there's two of these white boxes right underneath each other, right inside each other. And what this does is, what I've done with this is that I've actually mentioned this block over here. I mentioned this thing wherever I'm talking about gravitational potential energy, I've written into this block. So for whenever I wanted to talk about it, like for instance, this is located somewhere else on this page because this is quite a long page, but whenever I want to refer to this, I add to this block and it's reflected everywhere. And this is just a whole new way of thinking, and having this helps you make connections to previous thoughts. Like you can see the context over here, that it's something that's used in, it gives you an example of a transformation of energy that gravitational potential energy is involved in, this example over here. Now as you go scroll down, this is one application that I've developed specifically for myself, is that I've created for each equation that I've mentioning, if it's new, I embed it under a block called science equations. Let's see if I have an example over here. Yeah, right here. So as you can see, there's a block that I've referenced from science equations. So it's inside the to-do page, and there's 26 references that I've made to this. So what I do is, whenever I am introduced to a new equation, wherever I am, I create this block called science equations, and I refer to this block over here by creating a linked reference, and I write down a title or just write down the equation itself sometimes. And underneath that I write some explanation for it. And whenever I want to refer to this equation or want to give it more context, you can see over here what this means is that I refer to this equation using block references, the block reference syntax. So let me show you some more places where I've referred to it. Like in this, I refer to this equation, work is equal to force times distance. And bringing up this tooltip, you can see that it was defined in Introduction to Energy in Khan Academy Physics. So over here I can see let's actually just open this in the right side, in the main view. And over here you can see what I've made the definition. I've added a block reference to a place where I've elaborated on this, but also wherever I've mentioned this equation. So I've literally written down this equation here, and now I can get examples of the usage of this equation, the application of it. So for instance, over here I can see that you can derive the equation weight is equal to mass times accelerations times force, and because displacement is basically the average velocity times average of time, which you can simplify to v upon 2 multiplied by v upon a, we get the weight is equal to mass times acceleration times velocity upon 2 times velocity upon a. If you simplify this, you get the equation kinetic energy is equal to half of mass times velocity squared. So using this, I can actually, by simply opening up this equation, I can see that this equation can be derived from this very equation. So another thing is that what is work, and you can see that this equation is used for defining what is work. So, and I can get more context for it here. So my entire system revolves around getting context for information, and that's arguably one of the biggest places where Logseq excels in. So for instance, So overall, Logseq is just really good at helping me understand this. Now, I've talked about block references quite a bit, so I'll just give an example of where I use block references. So let's say I'll go to my nuclear physics page. Nuclear physics, not the one I'm looking for. Let's say I go back to my physics, grade 10 physics page. And let's say now I go to grade 10 atomic physics. Right, so over here, one actually interesting thing here is that I've used these cards, which I'll just go into in a bit. But I think that's more of a topic for another video. But let's say as you can see, I've written quite a bit here. And I've related it to other topics. Here's another application of that science equations thing. And actually one benefit about this is that I can at a glance see all of the equations that I've talked about, and this makes it really easy to prepare for exams or just generally check my understanding of equations, make sure I understand most of them, make sure I'm not forgetting some of them. It's just very useful for me. So I can go through here, thermal physics, mechanics, the equations that are used, the Suvat equations. All this is just collected under one place. Like normally, let's say you're using pen, paper, notebook style thing, you would usually have a glossary, right? Now this is literally a glossary in its own right. And I've actually created similar things for various other things. So for instance, I've created one for science keywords as well. So I link to the general keywords here like acceleration, system, equilibrium, sigma. All this stuff is just sum of force. And I've used latex here, so which basically is a way to render equations in Logseq. And yeah, you can just see that generally I'm just showing Coulomb's constant, bunch of terms here, and all these are just embedded into this science keywords. So at a glance, if I want to know about the general keywords that I should be knowing about the units that have been covered so far, I can easily tell. And a lot of these places have actually linked to resources. So over here, I've actually directly embedded this what is work block, which has been embedded in other places as well. For instance, here in the energy transformations page and thermal physics, 3 separate pages I've all added onto this thing or added onto this block. And the fact is that you don't have to use Logseq in this exact way. It can be used differently for everyone. This is just a workflow that works for me. I like to have pages for each unit that I'm in. I like to link pretty heavily, and all this is just why I love Logseq. Now, in addition to that, there's lots of other features, a lot of niche features, some more useful. For instance, the flashcards feature, where I can go to flashcards that use spaced repetition. I can create them easily using just the hashtag card. So let's say, so this is one of them. What is alpha radiation? So what is alpha radiation? I'll answer that. So I'll be like, alpha radiation is the nucleus of helium, and it has a +2 charge. And what else? It has a short time of, it has a high ionizing energy, but it has a short level, it doesn't travel a long distance, it has low penetrative potential and can be stopped very easily. So let's just say show answers. And now you can see here, if I didn't quite remember it fully. I didn't get the details and all that, so I'll just write took a while to recall. And then from here on, I get more and more questions that are done using a spaced repetition algorithm, which I think is a super memo algorithm. And all this is just a very nice way to learn. I use it a lot for physics, these flashcards, but these can be applied for other subjects as well. Now, what else? Alright, so another thing I really like is the graph view, and because every note is its own entity, it's not necessarily belonging to another thing, you can actually visualize the connections between all your notes, and it's quite gorgeous here. You can see how each note that you've taken is connected, and yeah, it just looks really nice. There isn't a lot of function here so far, but it's quite useful. It's just quite nice to look at, and there are page graphs as well, so I can just zoom in a bit more. But there's page graphs as well, so if I go back into the physics page graph and go, let's say, into grade 10 physics, if I go here, I can open the where was that again? Well, it looks like I've lost the option somewhere. Logseq is quite complicated to use, so it can take quite a bit of time to get used to. Even I'm still having trouble sometimes figuring out where everything is. Oh yeah, right here. Yes. Open the page draft, and you can see the pages that are linked to it, and it just shows you the connections between everything. Now, probably a better example would be opening, let's say, thermal physics page, and opening the page draft for thermal physics. And over here, you can see a lot more connections between things. And probably if I open energy transformations, which is probably one of my biggest notes, you can see even more connections being made. So looking closer, I've just expanded the right sidebar. So you can see all these topics are connected. And just, while there isn't a huge amount of functionality yet, it's just quite a nice way to think about things, and it really helps put your notes into perspective. Now, I think that's most of what I want to show for this video, although perhaps I'll talk about the daily note and time tracking and all. So as you can see here, you may have noticed at the beginning I have like these queries, to-dos and all. So I've actually created a system, which I'll probably make another separate video talking about. Basically what this does is it organizes my tasks, and then this daily note is a concept in Logseq, which is every day you have this own note. And this is actually a pretty nice way to append time-based, but not just time-based content to notes. So I often use this for, let's say, assessment deadlines or just like assessment guidelines. So I can create a link to, let's say, I have an assessment on I don't know, kinetic energy coming up. So I open up kinetic energy and I just create a link to it, and then I can write assessment on kinetic energy, or actually probably better would be energy transformations. And over here I'll just like write a bit about, I can probably add a schedule date, which is one thing I love, one pretty interesting thing about Logseq, that you can schedule dates and all. So 3rd of December, let's make that. And then I can also create a study list, let's say revise Logseq notes, and I use command enter to create the to-do. So let's say, what else? I can create a to-do on create a video explanation, which is actually one of my favorite ways to learn. And yeah, let's just create these two for now. And when the day comes, it'll come under my reminders that I have this. I should probably also schedule this somewhere. Let's say, what if I can actually do it today if I wanted to. So I'll just show you it as an example. So a new pane will come up that says schedule and deadline, and it also shows you this right now. These are for now, shows you just the more current things that you're doing right now. And yeah, Logseq also has a pretty nice plugins market, lots of themes and all, but that's probably going to be another video entirely. And that's just one of the things I wanted to show you. There's a lot more that I've probably missed, but it's just a brief into Logseq. And Logseq is definitely not easy to learn, and there's a lot that I haven't covered in this video. So there will definitely be a lot more videos on this topic coming soon. So keep on the lookout for those. Once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for watching.